You're with Julian on the brand new and a gone but forgotten kind of review of Basic Instinct, a film I saw at the cinema in 1992 on its release and have never seen since, and watched on TV last night. My opinion of Basic Instinct has always been terrible. Well, a retrospective review. Paul Verhoeven, not Danish, I'm sure that's the worst possible country you could have called them from. The Dutch filmmaker is one of these people whose films continually go under revision. He was noted for making very lurid, controversial films that have, in the subsequent years, been regarded in a different light. And I kind of feel like I regard Basic Instinct in a different light. So he kind of made a name for himself. He's very prolific, but in the sort of late 70s with films like Soldier of Orange, which starred Rutger Hauer, classic war film. Before moving to America in the 80s, Flesh and Blood I actually saw, which was like a superior Conan the Barbarian film. But then he went on a run of Zeitgeist films. And it's these films that have really sort of remained in the public memory, posited him as a unique filmmaker. So RoboCop is still, you know, a hugely regarded film. Total Recall, and then Basic Instinct, Showgirls, the film that famously has become a massively loved cult disaster. Starship Troopers, that's still being revised and talked about to this day as a satire on that kind of right-wing nationalism and so on. And he sort of tapped out of America with The Hollow Man, which was the, I think, Kevin Bacon starring Invisible Man. Even his bad films, they're so lurid and so incredibly crazy that even that's interesting. No, not a good film. Before he moved back to Europe, and a couple of years ago he made Elle, which is just an absolutely astonishing film. Isabelle Huppert should have won Best Actress, way over Emma Stone that year. Incredible film. So maybe his most controversial out of a run of very controversial films was the neo-noir film from '92, It Just About Qualifies, starring in her star-making performance Sharon Stone. The film drew enormous condemnation. It was picketed by gay rights activists once the script was leaked, and it involved people who were gay or bisexual and serial killers. It was they even tried to shut down shooting by chanting all the time, in a similar manner to William Friedkin's film Cruising a decade earlier, which focused again on the serial killer in the gay BDSM subculture of New York, and that was picketed heavily, and there was a lot of trouble about its explicit content when it came out. It's really like the sister film to Cruising. It caused so much trouble, a very glossy sister, but the sex was incredibly explicit, the nudity, the violence, and people questioned, are you linking people's sexuality with a proclivity for being a murderer? And it was great stuff. Grist for the Mill stuff. Written by Joe Eszterhas, who also has quite an esteemed record as well. And starring Michael Douglas, perfectly cast in a number of films throughout that era. I mean, the Bunny Boiler one, Fatal Attraction as well. He was everywhere back then. I think the best casting of him came in The Game, David Fincher's film. He plays a cop in this film investigating the murder of a music industry figure who is connected with government. At the start, we see this very graphic sex scene with a naked blonde woman whose hair just hides her face so you can't quite tell who it is, who, in a sexual encounter, brutally stabs this guy multiple times with a ice pick. The modus operandi of the killer involved. It's a very brutal and confronting opening scene. Michael Douglas and his compadre, the detectives, put on the case. He's your usual, I don't do things by the book. But he has this other side to himself, which is revealed over the course of the film, which is that one, his wife's dead. Two, he used to be a massive alcoholic and he's now stopped drinking and smoking. And three, he has been through the ringer due to a couple of tourists being killed in a shootout involving drug dealers, where he killed two tourists. He's been through the mill. He's constantly watched by internal affairs. He suffers psychologically from what happened. And he sees Jean Tripplehorn in a slightly unusual arrangement. His lover, off and on, is his psychiatrist. She's a police psychiatrist who has to see him regularly because of the trauma of the event that happened. And he's trying to put his life back together. Into this mix comes one of the greatest and most explosive female performances of that entire era, Sharon Stone, who is the girlfriend of the murdered man, but not quite. She's shown very early on to have relationships with men and women and be very freewheeling when it comes to sex and drugs and everything else. And she has a very great opening scene where the two detectives come and question her, and it's clear that she is above them in every way and they have nothing. And then we get the iconic sequence where she offers to come downtown to be questioned, and does the same. She runs circles around everyone involved. Everyone seems both completely besotted by her and utterly terrified of her. She even does a polygraph. And she does the famous thing where she crosses and uncrosses her legs and shows herself to be not wearing any panties. One of the most famous scenes, even in The Simpsons ripped it off, one of the most famous scenes in history. She has complained that the director Verhoeven didn't tell her that was going to happen, and has also said that she supports him doing it, but she wishes she'd known. She thinks that it was good for the film and the director was right, but she also didn't like the fact that she says she would have done it. He just didn't tell her. One of the most famous scenes in movie history. Every time Sharon's, this whole film seems to be waiting for Sharon Stone to come on film. I mean, her performance in Casino has long been heralded as her best. It's a magnificent performance. I wonder whether this performance isn't better. It's not as well written a character, for sure. But the whole film feels like it waits for her to appear on screen. She's not even a lead actor. She is really a supporting actor here. Douglas is in every scene. And every scene she's in, Douglas is in. She doesn't have any real scenes on her own. There is some good supporting play from who plays Roxy. I thought her character was great. Well, Jean Tripplehorn as the psychiatrist and Leilani Sorrell as Roxanne. We find out that Sharon Stone's character writes murder novels, and the murder that's just happened in exactly the same way in her previous book. So is she a psychopath who is acting out these murders on the understanding that because she's written about them, no one will ever believe that she did them because she incriminates herself so badly? Or is somebody out to get her by murdering people in the way that it happens in her books? We also find out she has friends like Roxy, her gay lover, who was imprisoned when she was very young for murdering her two brothers. And she has another friend who murdered her family. And Sharon Stone's character, Catherine Trammell, makes out that these are, she writes murder novels. She goes to interview people that have committed murders. And Michael Douglas's character gets sucked further and further into her world of inhibition, of drugs and sex. And he can't resist her, but she can also push his buttons like crazy. And then we're off on this neo-noir ride, which it does kind of qualify for on the basis that Michael Douglas doesn't know what's going on for most of the movie, or even all the movie, really. Things here that are much better than the lurid nature that you remember it for. The fantastic cinematography from Jan de Bont. It is really well shot. It looks fantastic. Maybe not so on a VHS small TV back in 1995, but now it really looks great. The editing by Frank Uriost was Oscar nominated. The brilliant music by Jerry Goldsmith was Oscar nominated. The film craft on display here is fantastic. I found the whole, does it demonize gay people not to hold any water? It just really didn't. I found the Sharon Stone character to be far more interested in the impact she has on anyone and the control she exhibits over anyone, and sexuality not to even really be a massive component of the film. Like the big relationship is between Douglas's detective and his faltering grip on himself and reality and his job and everything around him, because of the impact that she has on him, is like the dominant force in the movie. It goes down potboiler routes. I thought, some of the elements are well paced in the revelations. I'm not sure it got quite over the line in the final revelations. One scene I really wish I would change is one that made me laugh in the cinema, and I still remember laughing, which is the end sort of love-making scene where will she or won't she grab the ice pick? Has been done several times in the film up until that point, and then they really overload it. And I thought, I wish they could change that scene. And I think they had a real opportunity to carry on with the Sharon Stone in a sort of Hannibal Lecter-like franchise. She's a brilliant character. Her performance is so good. She's so seductive and then so button-pushing within 2 sentences. She looks amazing as well. And yeah, she was in Total Recall with Verhoeven as well, in a much smaller but hugely memorable role as Arnold Schwarzenegger's wife. And Verhoeven said that her ability to go from being so seductively charming to so evil in the space of such like snapping her fingers in Total Recall was why she got cast. Michael Douglas didn't want to cast for very good reasons. He'd read the script and he said, when this film gets released, we are going to get hammered and I'm the only A-list star in it, so I'm going to wear all of the nasty stuff in this film. I want an A-list Hollywood actress to be her, the Sharon Stone role, so we at least both get hammered. And in the end, everyone, I think 13 different actresses turned it down. From Julia Roberts to everyone else, they all turned it down because they would have read the script and said, there ain't no way on earth I'm playing that character or doing those explicit scenes. But it made Sharon Stone, and it's, I think, possibly her best, I would say equal with Casino as her best performance. A much better film than I remembered, and from a filmmaking craft, and it is stunning. And if you like really button-pushing, steamy pot boilers, like the kind of ones that they're sort of like the relaunch of noir in the late 70s and early 1980s, which are full of sex and violence and depravity, like the Brian De Palma films. This is great. So I'm going to give Basic Instinct a Gone But Forgotten 8.5 out of 10 warts and all.